Are you ready to dive into things, Wai?
I'm very ready. Let's do it.
CM Punk. What's going to happen to CM Punk, Wai?
Oh boy. I think he's coming back.
I think that is a pretty fair assessment at this point. Some great reporting this week. Fightful Select noting that at least a tentative return seems to be in the works for Punk, and to the point that it could be the June 21st Dynamite that will be in Chicago at the Wintrust Arena or somewhere around then. Dave Meltzer also throwing in that there is a meeting scheduled soon in AEW with Chris Jericho, CM Punk, Tony Khan, FTR, and perhaps one other non-wrestler personality. There is a lot more to this, but it has to play out. A lot of ambiguousness there. Obviously, three key names not listed on this meeting roll call, that being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. And this is what we have been stating since September. This was always going to need a resolution. And your options at that time throughout this whole thing and now were you cut bait on CM Punk with the idea that you are preserving enough harmony in your locker room. But clearly there are those that are very pro-Punk. But it would seem like a lot that are not as well. And that is what you're trying to balance here, complicated by the fact that Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are in contract years. And what moves are you making for short-term gain with CM Punk, who is a 44-year-old going on 45, who has been hit with two significant injuries over the last year, but he is your biggest star. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that. But if we are looking at an AEW where is this something significant enough that Omega and the Young Bucks are significantly looking elsewhere? I mean, in a perfect world, everyone can coexist here, but that becomes a big question mark. And then you're throwing in the potential of this Saturday night show that Andrew Zarian had reported on that would almost have the ability to create, whether it be a hard brand split or just a soft one where certain talent is earmarked for one show and one for the other. That to me feels like a temporary solution that you're just sort of putting aside, like this powder keg that still exists, that you have to get to the root of these problems. And there just seems to be a lot of games being played here. And you, the consumer, are trying to be swayed, I think, into what side you are believing on. But I do believe like there are a lot of games going on here, and how it's going to play out. I think the idea that we are never going to see CM Punk on an AEW broadcast again, I think the chances of that are lowering by the week.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is how much money does Tony Khan want to make? That's the only thing that I think really should matter. And if you're Tony Khan, you have contract renewals coming up. You want as big of a roster as you possibly can, and that includes having the Kenny Omega and the Bucks, and having CM Punk all under one roof. And you're going to do everything within your power to just at least for this year, while you're renegotiating, you want him a part of your system, just so that you can show the broadcaster this is what you'll be getting. The Saturday show, I think, might be the most, one of the most interesting pieces of information coming out of this. And I've seen a lot of like negative backlash from audiences thinking, well, this is silly, creating a brand new show, just to appease one guy. I think that might be part of it, but I think it's more so Tony Khan looking at this as an opportunity to put another hour or 2 hours on television that he can earn rights a rights fee from. And if you're Tony Khan, again, that's the only thing that matters here. How much money can you make out of all of this? And clearly, if he's still going to continue with these sort of talks and these sort of meetings to patch things up, that's what he should be focused on. How can we get everybody on the same page so that we can all make a lot more money?
It all comes down to what you believe is the infraction that was committed and who is owed an apology from all of this. And you can certainly make different arguments, but if I'm looking at one central figure, is CM Punk the only one that should be apologizing? Maybe not, but is he one that is at fault? Yes, 100%. on multiple fronts.
There
And I
have been
think if
several
he is,
steps of escalation throughout all of this, and yeah, Punk was responsible for a lot of that escalation. Sure.
and I think that ultimately, it is on him to do a lot of the work to repair these relationships. But maybe he does not feel that way. Maybe he feels that he was responding, he was not initiating, and that's where you get to like who is the one that needs to be the bigger person and be able to patch this all together. Like you might be too far gone at this point, and you are Tony Khan, and you might be making a move now that by the end of the year, it may be one that looks genius and does not look so great later.
I think ultimately Tony's will is going to dictate whether or not everybody is going to be okay with these decisions. I mean, this is the time for when Tony should be putting his foot down, and it doesn't matter what Punk wants, doesn't matter what Jericho, doesn't matter what the EVPs want. It's what he wants, and that should be the final say. And if the other guys are professionals, I mean, listen, they got into a pretty bad fight. It sounds like people were biting each other. Maybe it's kind of tough to come from that, but that seems to be what this mediation is for. Can everybody get on the same page? So again, this entire promotion can benefit.
Yeah, that's going to be the question. They've got a lot of big ideas for this year. The Wembley Stadium show would be like, this is when you want to have this guy back in terms of putting your biggest foot forward for that show.
So let's just say this Wintrust Arena rumor is true. So that would put him in line for Forbidden Door, all in, of course, and all out, and basically, the entire summer, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the go home show for before Forbidden Door. You could tee up something for him on very short notice to get onto that card if you wanted to. And then, yeah, you're going into the summer and everything is on Wembley Stadium, where like, I know that FTR, they're clearly angling for this 6-man tag. But to me, if that size of a show, I'm looking for something bigger for CM Punk than just the 6-man tag.
Or do you say that for All Out in Chicago?
I
think
we have All Out, if it's in Chicago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. A 6-man can be pretty big, especially with a lot of the parties involved. I think Kenny is the one that you don't put in that, because I think Kenny should be used for a singles match. But the Bucks and Blank Page, I suppose in that case versus CMFTR, that's a pretty big semi-main event, I think.
Yeah, and then to build that matchup, you have to go into all of this. And that is going to bring about all this stuff again, because you're going to be tasked with these guys going out there and basically shooting and leaning on this. And that's exactly how we got into this mess, was hitting too close to home on some of these promos. So there are a lot of potential red flags of what can go wrong here. And do
you think this changes the way AEW structures their promos? Because clearly, an instance like what we saw with Page and Punk was the result of just maybe bullet points and maybe just allowing people to say what exactly they want on air. Does that change, at least for this particular program, if not for everybody?
I don't think so, because the change would be scripting.
Or at least going through exactly what you're going to say, what insults you're going to say to somebody else.
Well, I would think that listen, I don't know when. I'm sure all guys are going to be different. I'm sure there are some that are just hit me with whatever out there. And there's, I would say, a decent percentage that if you're going to hit on something personal, most guys are not blindsided that it's coming their way, with the understanding that this is being done for business. Now, in the case of Punk and Hangman, Punk obviously did not know that line was coming about the workers' rights line. I think it would be a pretty good rule to have that if we're going to be skirting that close, that the other guy is aware of what's coming and that you're working together and not doing promo segments where I am working against you, because that is actually not the essence of what this is. Like, promos are not all that different than professional wrestling. We are trying to simulate conflict, but we are actually working together for the betterment of the product we're producing together. I think a lot can be learned from that, but we're going to see. Maybe this meeting will be the second season of All Access. That would be a hell of a way to start it.
Honestly, it'd probably be a far more interesting subject to follow.
Like, we kid, but I mean, if All Access gets a second season, this would be the basis of it, is CM Punk returning and all that comes with it.